Good morning in California, Brett. Thank you for joining us.
Wonderful to be with you, Shaun.
You're a long-standing friend of the World Tourism Forum Lucerne. You're CEO of a travel corporation. You're a leader in the World Travel and Tourism Council and an advocate of Sustainable Development Goals. So this topic needs very little introduction to you, but we're talking about biodiversity and tourism and a complex relationship, because tourism depends heavily on biodiversity for its own survival. At the same time, it's an important source of revenue for biodiversity conservation, but in some instances, it's also a threat. So I want to ask you firstly, sitting on one of the world's largest players in the value chain for travel and tourism, how do you see us translating the scientific case for taking species loss very seriously with translating that into policy and then practical actions on the ground?
And I think it's so important, Shaun. As we've seen on the global stage, unfortunately, especially here in the United States, where science is being challenged or science is being rejected as it pertains to fighting the virus, it just reinforces how important it is for us to understand, believe in, and follow what science tells us. And I know a number of cases where those of us in industry have employed science and or scientists. The Brando in Tahiti, as you know, has a full-time science staff there. We have a full-time anthropologist on our staff at Bushman's Kloof in South Africa. And through Shannon Nguyen, our Chief Sustainability and Treadright Officer, who's based in Toronto, she uses a lot of scientific data, and we also refer to a number of scientists and other consultants to provide us with advice and guidance on what we should be doing to mitigate our footprint, and also to help ensure biodiversity is not threatened or impacted wherever possible by our footprints or those of our travelers and guests.
Can I ask you, if you look at the traveler, you've got about 2 million, before COVID, 2 million customer touch points a year across 70 destinations. How are you firstly seeing behavior change with tourists compared to 10 years ago? And secondly, how do you contribute to that education and awareness process?
So I'm optimistic that the traveler of tomorrow will be better informed and more sensitive to or aware of some of the global issues. Here in America, they're talking about the worst hurricane season in a long time. 12 or so hurricanes are going to hit America. And everywhere you look, we're getting warnings. There are so many fires currently in California and Nevada. My family just went away for 3 days and they couldn't have a holiday in Tahoe because there was fires coming from California and Nevada, and they had to leave the house rental they were in after a day. So my wife just reiterated to me when she came home with our kids that you are seeing global climate crisis in our face every day. So I think the warnings are there, the activities there, and whether it's the media, whether it's companies like ourselves, individuals like yourself, WTFL, we all have a responsibility to better inform the traveler of today and tomorrow. Before COVID, we saw clearly the threat of over-tourism in many places. In COVID, we're seeing the exact opposite, that without tourism, there is decimation in the local communities. There is still terrible poaching of wildlife, as you know, in Africa, because people can't afford to feed their families. So it's a different kind of poaching, but it's still decimating wildlife, which are unprotected and needed. So what we're doing is we tell stories. We just completed a series of 3 videos with our 3 pillar ambassadors within Treadright, which are wildlife, people, and the planet. And each of our ambassadors, Celine Cousteau, Amy Vitale, who's a National Geographic photographer, and Serene Fox, who's an Indigenous activist based in Canada, we've had them each tell stories about how Serene has just spoken in a video, and I'll send them all to you, about how cultural communities have been impacted without tourism around. Amy just spoke beautifully from Montana, where she's locked down about the importance of wildlife in tourism, both to experience it, but also to protect it. And then next month, Celine's going to talk about the planet and obviously how there's been a recent respite, but irrespective of that, global climate challenges are still very much prevalent, and we have an existential crisis, and we have to all play a part in trying to address it. So stories are one. In all of our collateral and communications, we talk about, you know, what we can do to make a difference. And we're just launching next month a new 5-year strategy called How We Tread Right, in 2 words. And that's with a lot of science behind it. We've analyzed and continue to track our business footprint, and we've come up with ways to be carbon neutral within the next 5 to 6 years from a business standpoint. And then we're working on different ways to mitigate our travelers' footprints as well, mostly with offsets at this point. But we've also invested in a lot of solar in South Africa, here in America, and elsewhere. So as you know better than I do, there are so many things we need to do, and any and all of us can have an impact by making a small action, a small difference today, tomorrow, every day.
You also serve on the executive committee of the World Travel and Tourism Corporation. That's the global industry body addressing the COVID fallout and messaging to government. What is your message to governments operating in 70 different jurisdictions about the policy response needed to ensure recovery, and that in the process of recovery, we don't divert resources away from ecotourism assets, national parks, and biodiversity?
Despite what you say about our numbers, we're not that large or important within the industry that we do not have a voice at any government table, unfortunately, besides maybe South Africa that we were speaking about earlier. So we see membership in WTTC, World Travel and Tourism Council, as our way of having a seat at the table with governments through Gloria Guevara and WTTC's efforts. We've certainly spoken about it for many years, but there's been too much talk and not enough action. So very pleased that recently WTTC has agreed to start a new sustainability committee, which is going to be chaired by one of our members, Daryl from Intrepid, who has an outstanding record, is a B corporation, is already carbon neutral and working to be carbon positive soon. And the idea is this committee will drive policy from WTTC in its various industries, ocean cruise, river cruise, land operators, hotels, and so forth. And that we together need to come up with policies and protocols as we have for operating in this time of COVID from a hygiene and distancing standpoint, and then take those two governments and ask them, build awareness with them to really be more active in how we protect wildlife on the ground, how we mitigate some of these footprint issues, how they can help control, obviously, reasonable growth of new development, as we've seen in Spain the past couple of years. So I'm very optimistic that this is a good time to do it, despite the devastating impact that COVID has had around the world. We've all had a moment to pause and observe what's the world like when we've been locked down at home. And I certainly hope that this is such a powerful message to everyone when you look at what science has told us was the start of this virus. There is so much that has to be done to eliminate these wet markets, to reduce wildlife crime. We just signed up with our good friend John Scanlon from African Parks and CITES. He just started a new organization to end wildlife crime, which you might have heard of. So we've signed up for that to see how we can help drive that and build awareness. You know, there's so many good organizations out there, and whether it's WTTC, whether it's WTFL that do wonderful work as well, especially with educators. You know, there is so much work to be done. So I salute you and WTFL as well for bringing more focus and attention that's urgently needed to these subjects.
Thank you. I want to ask you a last question. I know the Sustainable Development Goals are very close to your heart. You're a co-founder of a Treadright Foundation. You've invested in 55 projects around the world, and I'm sure many of these had great learnings. And at World Tourism Forum Lucerne, we're looking for those new business models, new partnership models, new funding models that can be scaled and replicated. If you had to draw 2 or 3 lessons on these new models emerging from your work in the Treadright Foundation, what would that be?
Number 1 would be never say never. In South Africa, at this Relais Chateau property, we have Bushman's Kloof in the Cederberg Mountains. They have a very rare animal called the Cape leopard that is down to less than 100 in the species. And over time, we've tried different projects. We did a collar program for several years to help track them. That didn't really help get them killed by farmers, which have encroached on their habitat. And due to the long-standing droughts, as you know, it's been over a decade in that area, the leopard can't feed itself, and the farmers are struggling with this terrible drought. So the Cape leopard is coming down and preying on the livestock, and the farmers are having to kill them to protect their livestock. We learned about a program through another organization called Cheetah Outreach, where they brought in these Anatolian Turkish sheepdogs to protect the herds from cheetahs in other parts of South Africa, Somerset West being one, in order to stop killing leopards. So we've applied that, and we've taken these Anatolian sheepdogs, working with this Cheetah Outreach organization, and we've come to farmers in the Cederberg Mountains area and said, we will provide you with one of these Anatolian sheepdogs through Treadright. We'll pay for it, we'll train it, we'll feed it for the first year, bring it into your farm environment. It's obviously not a domesticated animal, so it stays with the herd. And after the first year, hopefully you can afford to keep it, and you will see that this will help protect your herd. The leopard won't kill any of your livestock. You don't have to kill the leopard. The program's now in its 3rd year. We've gone from 4 farms, I think it's up to 15. Initially, there was quite a bit of resistance, but obviously one example gave an example to another one of the farmers. And we're so proud of that project because you have seen an absolute reduction in the killings of these Cape leopards. So that's a wonderful example of where you can apply best practice from another part of, or another species, for example, to that. So that's why I said, you know, initially the farmers resisted, they didn't want to do it. Mm-hmm. And now we can actually we've added a guest experience to Bushman's Kloof where they can come and visit one of the farmers, have a tea with them. The farmer talks about their livelihood, how hard it is to be a farmer in this part of the world. And they talk about the Cape leopard program. You're not allowed to go near the animals because, again, they're not domesticated. But it's a wonderful way then for people traveling to that part of the world to understand some of the struggles, the issues that farmers are dealing with there, and what one's doing to try to protect a wild species. And then from a local community standpoint, another project we're very proud of, which came to us through a industry visit that we made to Jordan about 3 years ago with Tourism Cares, a US-based nonprofit that helps rebuild, resuscitate, or support vulnerable areas for destination, help them recover and benefit from all the positives of tourism. And we got to visit Iraq Al Amir, a women's cooperative started in 1993 by Queen Noor. 150 women live there in this local community. It was started, they built out some areas for them where they could show and help make rug weaving from Turkey, pottery making, paper making, and then some of the culinary cuisine of that area. But they didn't have any tourists coming there. They hadn't earned a salary in several years. They were behind on their taxes, behind on their electric bills. Once Tourism Cares opened my eyes when I went there to see it, I said, how can we help? So Treadright has come up with a multi-year grant. We've helped build out their gift shop, which is now properly merchandised. So when someone comes, they can learn how to make a piece of pottery, Jordanian pottery, and then go into a well-merchandised gift shop and see the exact same piece of pottery that someone made there and buy it as a trinket or a souvenir to take home for gifts. Authentic, real tourism gifts made right there by these people. So you know as a traveler, you're enjoying it and benefiting the local community. And then we've taken 7 of our brands, Trafalgar, Insight, Luxury Gold, African Travel, Lion World, Uniworld, and Kentucky. And all of them are now bringing travelers to Iraq Al Amir each year. Those ladies are giving us a meal. So we're generating additional income by them hosting us. They try one of those experiences, and then they're buying stuff in the gift shop. And we worked with the local organization, Baraka, who we were introduced to through Tourism Cares, an amazing young woman who runs it. And she helped us ensure all of these practices were put in place, the money was spent effectively. So it's just been another beautiful story of working with local communities, supporting them, bringing business to them, and helping see them lift up, earn a consistent salary or income. They're two wonderful examples of small incremental efforts that we in the industry can make, or anyone, and how you can benefit someone directly or help protect a species.
Fascinating. I wish we had time to discuss the other 52 examples from your portfolio. But thank you very much for spending time with us this evening. And we look forward to seeing you at the next World Tourism Forum Lucerne think tank next year,
May.
virtually or personally.
I can't wait, Shaun. And I wish you all the best. It's great to see you, and the best to you and your family. Stay safe, stay strong, my friend.
Thank you, Brett.
Thanks, Shaun.